Welcome to Improve Your English Writing video number 25, where I'm discussing grammar topics, and this is the third and final video on grammar. In this video, we're going to cover indefinite pronouns, subjects joined by and, subjects joined by or, collective nouns. The subject is a phrase or clause, and last but not least, words that come between the subject and the verb. If you'd like to get notifications for this series, please click subscribe. If you like the video or think others will find it useful, please hit like. And check out links to books and videos in the description, like the link to the companion volume, Improve Your English Writing. So let's talk about indefinite pronouns. So basically, indefinite pronoun does not refer to a specific person or thing. Most indefinite pronouns use a singular verb. That's the good news. So if you're not too sure, maybe the best guess is to use a singular verb. And some of these indefinite pronouns which take a singular verb are anyone, which, every, everyone, much, no one, nothing, something, and there's a whole list of them in the book. So some examples. So someone or something, we use a singular verb. So something is not right about the new law. Since this is an indefinite pronoun, it's one that takes a singular form. And some indefinite pronouns use a plural verb. For example, these indefinite pronouns, both, few, many, most, none, and some. So for example, a few. So we recognize this as an indefinite pronoun that takes a plural verb. So a few do not see the problem, though. So this is a plural form of the verb. Sees would be, with an S, would be the singular form, but since with few we use the plural form of see. And some indefinite pronouns use a singular or plural verb depending on the subject, depending if the subject is singular or plural. So meaning, if the subject is singular, use a singular verb. If the subject is plural, use a plural verb. And some of these indefinite pronouns are all, any, more, most, none, and some. So here's two example sentences. Is funding available? Yes, some is available. So here, some is actually referring to funding. And funding is singular. Therefore, in this sentence, we will use a singular verb with some. But here's an example where some is going to be used with a plural verb. So some of the people are obnoxious. Here, some is actually working together with people. So since people is plural, we would use a plural verb. So some of the people are obnoxious. So there we go. So here we see some, the indefinite pronoun some, being used with a singular verb and with a plural verb. So let's talk about subjects joined by and. So basically, if you have two or more subjects joined by and, that requires a plural verb. For example, Rebecca and Susan. So I have two subjects joined by and, then we use a plural verb. Subject and Susan are traveling together. Steve and Ken are brothers. So we have two subjects joined by and, we use a plural verb. Exceptions though, because it seems like in English there's always an exception. So the exceptions include 1, when the subject or subject parts are preceded by each or every. Or another exception is when the subjects or the parts, things joined by and, or the subject parts joined by and, refer to the same person or thing. And third, when the subject parts, form a singular idea. Well, let's look at some examples. Sometimes I say if I read the rules to you, if they're not clear, always stay tuned for the examples, because you can always look at the examples, then read the rule and understand. So let's look at some examples. Each man and woman is protected by the same rights. So here we have you know, two, two subjects that are joined by each. This case is one of the exceptions. When we have this preceding, then we know it uses a singular verb. Each man and woman is protected. The union's president and treasurer is Janet Smith. So here we have an example of the second exception. The parts refer to the same person. So treasurer and president and treasurer are referring to the same person. Therefore, we use a singular verb. The union's president and treasurer is Janet Smith. Third and final example is peanut butter and jelly is my favorite sandwich. So here we have that the subjects joined by and actually form a singular idea. So this peanut butter and jelly sandwich, this peanut butter and jelly flavor forms a singular idea. Therefore, I guess this, the peanut butter should have been all highlighted in blue. Is my favorite sandwich. So here we have an example where the subjects joined by and form a single idea. Therefore, we use a singular verb. Now let's move on to the subjects joined by or. When or joins two subjects, the verb agrees with the subject nearest or. So that means if the subject near or is singular, use a singular verb. If the subject nearest or is plural, then you use a plural verb. Does that make sense? So the verb, and to avoid awkwardness, though, place the plural verb the plural subject next to the verb when one subject is singular and the other is plural. Basically, it would be you could place the singular subject next to the verb, but it sounds awkward. It's technically correct, but it sounds awkward in English. So let's look at some examples. The accountant or the banker knows the cost. Here we actually have two singular subjects, but with an or, the verb agrees with the subject nearest the or. So it's banker. So since banker's singular, we use a singular verb. Good news is they were both singular. The accountant or the bankers know the cost. So same sentence, but here I've made changed the banker to bankers, and per the rule, the subject agrees with this. The verb agrees with the subject closest to or. So therefore, it is bankers. So bankers is plural. We use a plural verb. The accountant or the bankers know the cost. And last but not least, an example to avoid awkwardness, but I'm just going to put it out there for you and read it. So I'm going to say the accountants or the banker knows the cost. This is somewhat awkward. The accountants or the banker knows the cost. It would actually be better to reverse these. You would say the banker or the accountants know the cost. Would be better. It just sounds better. So while this is grammatically correct, it reads somewhat awkward. So now let's talk about collective nouns. When all members of a collective noun is just a group of people, animals, or things, when they act together as a group, which is the usual situation, use a singular verb. So you can say the orchestra often plays at the Civic Center, because we assume the orchestra they're all acting together. Hopefully they're all acting together. If not, this orchestra will not sound good. But here they're all playing it's a collective noun. They're all playing together, acting as a group. Therefore, it gets a singular verb. The orchestra plays. However, when members of the collective noun act separately as individuals, use a plural verb. So if This is the reverse case. So really a collective noun, how you what verb you use depends if they're acting together or acting separately. So when the collective noun acts separately, you use a plural verb. And the sentence would be, the orchestra are tuning their instruments. This actually sounds a little funny in English if you don't know. We're used to the collective noun having a singular verb because up here, this is what I said, when the collective noun acts together, which is the usual situation, use a singular verb. So what happens in English is that most people are not used to hearing a plural verb with a collective noun. The orchestra are tuning their instruments. I bet you most people would say this, the orchestra is tuning their instruments. I think that's probably what most people would say, but since I guess the orchestra members, they are tuning their instruments individually, that they are not acting, or they are acting separately, they're not acting together. But a way around this is because a collective noun with a plural verb may sound awkward, especially to American speakers, consider adding members to the sentence. So I would just add members. The orchestra members are tuning their instruments. It says the same thing. I know we went over conciseness, but to get over this awkward sounding collective noun, I actually recommend adding the word members here so it does not sound awkward, because the orchestra members are tuning their instruments does not sound awkward. You've added a word to remove the awkward sounding of the sentence. Now let's just talk about two more miscellaneous topics. First is when the subject of the sentence is a phrase or clause, use a singular verb. So an example would be reading this book. So reading this book is a subject. Then we use a singular verb. Reading this book is an excellent way to improve your English writing. And the second miscellaneous topic I want to cover is ignore any words between the subject and the verb when evaluating the subject-verb agreement. However, that sounds pretty logical. The problem actually occurs when, I know this is sort of a long sentence and it may be confusing, therefore the example will probably help illustrate what's going on here. A common problem, though, occurs when a noun of an intervening prepositional phrase, so you have subject prepositional phrase, verb. So we have the intervening prepositional phrase immediately precedes the verb, and their intervening noun, meaning of the prepositional phrase, has a different number than the subject. So what's happening is that you have subject, you have a prepositional phrase which has a noun in it that comes right before the verb, and the subject and the noun of the prepositional phrase have a different number, meaning one's singular and one's plural. So that doesn't make sense. Let's look at an example. Incorrect. Here's the incorrect version. The reaction inside the large tanks stop because of chemical bonding. So what you have here, this is what I said, you have the subject, the reaction, you have a prepositional phrase inside the large storage tanks, then you have the verb. The problem is, though, is that the subject here, reaction, and the noun of the prepositional phrase, tanks, one is singular, this one's singular, this one is plural, but this plural verb is right before, this plural noun is right before the verb. So what happens is that what's going to be the common problem is that most people are then going to take this, they're going to conjugate it off of this noun here, but that's actually the wrong noun. This verb here actually belongs to the subject here, so it should be conjugated per the subject. So correct is the reaction inside the large storage tanks stops because of chemical bonding, because the sentence is the reaction stops because of chemical bonding. It is not the reaction stop because of chemical bonding. Notice when I read that it should sound awkward, but what happens when you insert this prepositional phrase and you have this plural noun right here, using this plural verb sounds somewhat natural when saying it. But this is what I'm getting at, is that this is this is miscellaneous too, meaning ignore the words between the subject and the verb when evaluating the subject-verb agreement. But the problem really is you have an intervening prepositional phrase and you have this situation. So that's what I'm really talking about. And that's it for this video. If you'd like to get notifications for the series, please click subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like and check out links to books and videos in the description. Thank you.